In this shot, we had excellent lighting, so you can see in both women in the photo the eye color. However, we can make it more of the focal point of the images so that the eyes pop. I'm going to zoom in with Command plus or Control plus, and I'll use my space bar to click and drag to bring these eyes into view. I'll start by using the Dodge tool. Dodge is a photography term meaning to lighten, and you could see how there's blue on the outside and green towards the inside. When digital cameras capture images, they tend to artificially darken the midtones, and the eye color, unless you have dark brown eyes, is typically found in the midtones, things that hover around 50%. In fact, you can go to Window, Info, and hover your mouse over here to see that the eye color is 57, 48, 61, all close to 50%, maybe a little darker and lighter depending on the spot. Now, when you dodge, 50% is way too extreme. I'm going to hit the number 2 for 20 so that it looks more natural. I'll hit my left bracket key on my keyboard until my brush size fits around the eye. And I'm not clicking and dragging yet. I'm simply estimating the brush size. Now, I'll click and drag, and it lightens the eyes, revealing more of that inside green color. I'll click the eye on Info to collapse it, and do the same on this eye. Another high-end trick is burning the edges, which increases the contrast between the whites of the eye and the inside of the iris of the eye, the colored part of the eye. So I'm going to switch to the Burn tool. Burn is a photography term, meaning darken. With the Burn tool, I'll hit the left bracket key on my keyboard to make my brush size about the size of the edge of the iris, the colored part of the eye. And I'll click and drag to richen that blue along the edges, really making that eye color stand out. Not altering the eye color per se, but opening it up for what you would see if you were naturally looking at this person in the light. There we go, just a couple sweeps around the outside. Also, as we age, our teeth and eye whites yellow, and in fact, I don't want to make those darker, so I will undo. I'm going to switch back to the Dodge tool. Dodging improves the contrast between the light and the dark areas and makes us look a little younger. In fact, I never thought I'd use these on children, but I find I'm using it all the time on shots of my children because the digital camera just didn't have great lighting in the room, so it looks like there's a shadow in the eye whites. And often I go too far, so I'm going to do some cleanup work and check myself later. The last step to making eyes pop is just to darken or burn the eyelashes. I tend to do this with women and babies, but not on men. It can make them look too feminine. Unless they want that kind of look, then go for it. But back to the Burn tool, I'm going to set the exposure to 20%, and eyelashes should be the darkest part of the image, so we'll burn only the shadows. This is also great for adding that smoky eye effect, which a lot of women are going for these days. So as I click and drag, it just richens the darkest tips of the eyelashes. And I even will often do that around the inside of the eye. A trick in modeling is they tend to line the inside of the eye, even up under the eyelid, to make the contrast between the dark and the light stand out more. Let's zoom down with Command minus a few times and see where we've come. I'll go to the History panel and stretch it. Click on the Original, which is the top history state, Before. Rather average, rather dull, interesting shot, but the eyes aren't popping. After. The eyes really pop, but I can clearly see I've gone too far with the eye whites, which is a common mistake. So that's when History will save your bacon. I'll hit the letter Y for the History brush. I'll zoom in again with Command plus or Control plus and use my spacebar to move my screen over. I'll use my right bracket on my keyboard to make the brush about the size of the eye whites, or you can feel free to dial the size in. And I'll dial the opacity down to 20%. That's kind of my favorite number, between 10 and 20 or 10 and 30. And I did 1, 2 to paint back 20, 40% of the original eye color, 1, 2 again to paint back 20, then 40. 20% of the original back, 40% of the original. 20, 40. Now if I fit in window, I might do a little bit more. Click the original, before, after. The eyes really pop. And even if you aren't a mascara wearer, eyelashes do make you look more feminine, and everyone should have them. So let's richen up over here. I'll use the same technique, but more quickly this time. Dodge to open up a little of the eye color. Open up the eye whites, making my brush bigger or smaller with my left bracket and right bracket key. And a little trick, if you get a little redness to the eye, underneath the dodge and burn is a sponge tool. And if I make the sponge tool smaller, sponge desaturates or sucks out the red going towards black and white. So if you have red lines in your eyes, this will make it far less obvious. And then back to dodge for a little bit more of whitening. And we'll finish with burn. Everything's still at 20%, and I'll burn just the edges of the eye color. There we go. This side. And a bigger brush to burn the eyelashes. And in this case, it might be looking like there's too much makeup applied, so you can use Y for history and maybe 5 for 50% opacity and just lighten some of that rich tone that was added. This is your judgment call as the retoucher of this image. But if I fit in window and go to history, before, after. Before, after. Just makes the eyes look much more alive. And I'm never really hosed, to use a technical term, until I close the file. History only exists while the image is open, so if you've gone too far on the eye whites, which is very easy to do, just bring them back subtly by painting back with history. Before, after. Before, after. I'm much happier with that. That's more subtle. And to finish this off, I also use dodge at about 20% for midtones to do teeth whitening. Sometimes you can have pretty white teeth, but just shadows make it look darker. And again, as we age, our teeth and eye whites tend to yellow. So just like the eyes, if you go too far in eye whitening, this will help. And I'll fit in window, and now before, after, before, after. A little too far on the teeth, so Y for history. I'll just sweep straight across with the 20%, and there's a little bit more natural tone, but before, after. Brighter, whiter, yet natural looking. Give these techniques with dodging and burning and painting with percentages of history a try on some of your own photos. I'm always astounded at how much more compelling I can make a shot with these few simple tricks.